Chapter 7, Walking High Above the World. You ever notice how the smell of gunpowder makes you thirsty? Because after the fireworks, I'm aiming us for where the food carts are parked along the street, thinking about an ice-cold lemonade, how clean it will taste, and for a moment I almost forget that Freak is riding on my shoulders. "Amazing perspective up here," he's saying. "This is what you see all the time." "I'm not that big," I say. "This way you're like 2 feet taller than me." "Cool," he says. "I love it." We're working our way through the crowd and we're almost to the food carts when Freak tugs on my hair. "Creighton at 2 o'clock, he says, real urgent. 2 more at 3 o'clock. I go, "Huh? What?" "The Blade and his gang," Freak hisses. "They've locked onto us. Their trajectory is converging. Go to the left," he says. "Make it quick if you want to live." Too bad I'm a little confused about rights and lefts. If I don't think about it, I know. But if I have to think about it quick, my mind goes blank. Right? Left? What does it all mean? "Left!" Freak says, and he kicks me with his little foot like he's digging into a horse, and it clicks in my head. "Go that way. Follow the feet." "Faster," Freak is saying, and he's urging me on. It's lucky for me the little dude doesn't have any spurs, but I don't care. I just want to get clear of Blade. "Warp factor 9!" Freak is shouting. "More speed, oh mighty beast!" Now I'm running at a full gallop, weaving through the crowd, and I don't even need to look back. All I have to do is follow the way Freak is kicking his feet, steering me. I'm pretty sure we're getting away until this punk comes out of nowhere. He's one of Blade's gang, and he's got this big, ugly grin. "Over here! Tony! Got him cornered!" "What do?" I say to Freak. He goes, I'm thinking. I can hear Blade before I can see him, hear his wicked laugh, so mean and dirty it makes my stomach freeze up and my knees feel squishy. "You, the Freak! You and that giant retard! I'll cut you down to size. Dice and slice, baby! Freak show time!" And now I can see him, see that pointed white grin and his eyes so dark and cruel, and he's swaggering through the crowd. He's got us surrounded with punks. Everywhere I turn, there's another mean face trying to look as tough as Tony D. In a small voice, I say, "Tell me what to do." And Freak pats me on the shoulder and says, "Just give me a nanosecond to process the alternatives." "Slice and dice." That's Blade, and he's reaching into his back pocket. "Make it quick," I hiss, and then Freak is kicking my right shoulder, and I turn that way, and he's saying, "Go, go!" And I run right over this punk. He's so surprised, he loses his bubble gum, and he tries to grab my leg, but I kick free, and I'm running right and then left, running blind, and just letting Freak decide which way I should go, because he must have a plan, a dude as smart as that. Which I'm right about. He does have a plan. Only the plan is to run out into the smelly mill pond and drown us both. "Go on!" he's shouting from up above my head. "Trust me, we'll be okay." Blade is shouting too, and I can hear his feet pitter-pattering behind me, catching up. "Warp speed!" Freak is shouting, and he's kicking with both feet now, which means go straight. "Head for the H2O!" The pond is right ahead of me, and I'm sort of running along the edge, crunching over the bottles and cans and candy wrappers, and then I hear this zingy sound, and I just know that Blade is swinging a knife, cutting the air right behind us, and there's nowhere to go but into the pond, like Freak wants me to. I almost lose it right there, taking the first step, because it's a gunky pond, and the mud is really oozy and deep, and it sucks right up to my knees. But I'm so scared of getting cut by Tony D, so scared he might bite me with those wicked teeth, I just keep going. There's this great ugly sucking sound as my feet come back up out of the mud, and I stretch out as far as my legs will go, and I take another step, and I just keep going. I'm going so fast that the water is up to my chest before Freak gets my attention. He's tugging at my hair with both hands. "Whoa!" he's saying. "Slow up. We did it." The mud is up around my knees, and it's real hard to turn around. Finally, I get so I'm facing back at the shore, and there's Blade, just his head above the water, and he looks all white and scared. "Help!" he's blubbering, choking on that dirty water, and then his punksters are splashing in to rescue him. Man, they can hardly get him loose, the way he's stuck deep in that mud, and before they drag him to shore, they're all covered with slime and mud. They're gasping like fish, almost too tired to cuss us out, but that doesn't last. Blade is covered with mud right up to his neck, which on him looks natural. He turns to his gang, who looks as slimy as he does. "Get some rocks! It's target practice time!" "What do we do now?" I ask, because the mud is still sucking me down. It's over my knees now, and the water is right up under my arms, and even Freak's feet are getting wet. "Wait," Freak says. "The cavalry is coming. Can't you hear that bugle?" I'm listening, but I can't hear anything except for Blade and his gang, and how they're scrambling around trying to find some rocks to heave at us. I can see Blade rearing back to throw, and the first one misses us. "Can you move?" Freak says. I don't think so. It's true. The mud is up over my knees, and I'm locked in place. I can't even fall down. That's how stiff it is. I'm like a big fence post, and everybody knows a fence post makes a good target. More splashes as the rocks fall short. At first, they're throwing stuff that's too heavy. Pretty soon, they smarten up, and Blade says, "Smaller rocks! Get me smaller rocks!" And I know in my heart we're doomed. Then, up above me, there's this really loud, high-pitched screech. Freak has his fingers in his mouth, and he's whistling. Real shrill and shivery, and so loud it almost hurts my ears. And then I see what Freak has been seeing all along. A cop car cruising real slow along the road around the pond, which is what they always do after the fireworks. Freak is whistling, and the cop car spotlight comes beaming around the pond until it settles on us. I'm blinking because the light is so bright, and Freak is making a fuss and waving his arms, and we hear the metal megaphone sound of a cop voice ordering us not to move. Like we could, even if we wanted. It's hard to see in the glare of the spotlight, but Freak tells me that Blade and his punks are running away. Like snakes on sneakers, Freak says. "Officers!" Freak is shouting into the white light. "We request assistance!" They finally have to use ropes to pull me out of there. Freak won't let go. He stays right where he is on top of my shoulders, even when this cop on a boat tries to lift him off. And then we're up on the bank of the pond, and everybody is being real nice and giving us blankets and cokes and saying they know all about Tony D. They'll keep an eye on him. Don't you worry. "Okay, boys, you'd better give us your names and we'll call your mothers," this one cop is saying. And there's this other guy who's looking at me funny, and he says, "Hey, isn't that Kenny Kane's boy?" "Must be. Old Killer Kane. Is he still inside?" Freak is still holding tight to my shoulders, and when they ask him for his name, he says, "We're Freak the Mighty. That's who we are. We're 9 feet tall, in case you haven't noticed." That's how it all started, really. How we got to be Freak the Mighty, slaying dragons and fools and walking high above the world. Chapter 8. Dinosaur Brain. It turned out to be a cool summer. I figured we'd get in trouble for running into the pond. It looked bad for a while when the cops drove us home, and I got out all soaking wet and covered with gook, and when Grim was hosing me down, he had this really pruny look on his face, like he was smelling something bad. But the cops made out like I was a hero or something, rescuing the poor crippled midget kid. So Grim listens to the cops, and then he gives me this weird look. Like, imagine my surprise. And he goes in the house, and then Graham comes running out in her nightgown with this big fluffy towel. She really makes a fuss. Me rescuing Freak. What a joke, right? Except that's how it must have looked from a distance, because they never knew it was Freak who rescued me, or his genius brain and my big dumb body. Graham is there rubbing me with the towel, and her hands are shaking, and she's saying, "Oh, I saw those blue lights, and I thought the worst." And Grim is behind her looking at me real intense and shaking his head, and he's saying, "Who'da thunk it, Mabel?" Which is some kind of joke because Graham's name isn't Mabel. Anyhow, they take me inside, and the first thing Graham does is give me a bowl of ice cream. And Grim, he keeps shaking his head, and he goes, "What this young man needs is a cup of coffee. Real coffee." And then he gets busy putting the filter in the machine and measuring out the coffee and standing by while it drips through, and he's got this stern look like he's thinking deep thoughts. By the time I polish off the ice cream, Grim is handing me coffee in a china cup from the set they never use. He gives me that cup like it's a really big deal. Maybe because I'm not allowed to drink coffee yet, and he's so grim-like and serious, I open my mouth to say, "What's the big deal? You really think this is my first cup of coffee?" "Yeah, right." And something happens and the words come out, "Thank you, sir." And it's like I'm possessed or something. I have no idea where the things I'm saying are coming from or why. I go, "Thanks for the towel, Graham, and the ice cream. Could I have sugar in the coffee? 2 teaspoons, please." And Grim claps his hands together and he says, "Of course you can, son." And it's like, whoa, because he never calls me that. Always Max or Maxwell or that boy. Next thing, he's clearing his throat and coughing into his fist, and Graham is looking at the two of us, and she gets this Graham-like glow. Like, this is how it's supposed to be. The way things always happen on The Wonder Years, with the family getting all gooey and sentimental about some numb thing the bratty kid did while he's having all his wonderful years or whatever. Graham says, "I want you to promise me something, Maxwell dear. Promise me you'll keep away from that hoodlum boy and his awful friends. Nobody got hurt this time, but I shudder to think what might have happened." And Grim, bless his pointed little head, he goes, "Maxwell can handle himself, can't you, Max?" Right. Max, not son, which is okay by me. "I can run," I say to Grim. "I see Tony D, that's what I'll do." "Good boy," Graham says. "I thought, because you're so much bigger than he is. Well, you just do that, dear. You run away." "He's not running away," Grim says, real impatient. "He's taking evasive action, avoiding a confrontation. That's a very different thing, right, Max?" I nod and drink my coffee without slurping and decide it's better not to mention that Tony D carries a knife and he's probably got guns too, because then Graham would only worry, and she's such a clunker when she's worried. Like I said, it turns out to be a pretty cool summer. Usually what I do is just hang around and look at my comic books and watch the tube, or go shopping with Graham if she really makes a fuss. I hate the beach because the beach is stupid. The cool crowd looking sleek and tanned and aren't we gorgeous? And because if you saw me lying on a blanket, you'd go, "Hey, why is that albino walrus wearing sunglasses?" So mostly I just vegetate in the basement and pick my navel, to quote Grimm, Mr. Bellybutton lent himself. Freak changes all of that. Each and every morning, the little dude humps himself over and he bangs on the bulkhead. Wonka, wonka, wonka. He may be small, but he sure is noisy. "Get out of bed, you lazy beast. There are fair maidens to rescue, dragons to slay," which is what he says every single morning. Exactly the same thing until it's like he's this alarm clock. And as soon as I hear the wonka, wonka, wonka of him beating the bulkhead, I know what's coming up next. Fair maidens and dragons, and Freak with that wake up the world grin of his, going, "Hurry up with that cereal. How can you eat that much, you big ox? Come on, let's do something." He's so full of everyday energy. You can practically hear his brain humming, and he never can sit still. "Ants in the pants," I say one morning when he's ready to yank the cereal bowl off the table. He's in such a hurry to do something, and he goes, "What?" And I go, "You must have ants in your pants." And he gets this funny look and he goes, "That's what the fair Gwen always says. Did she tell you to say that?" And I shake my head and finish the cereal real slow. And Freak goes, "For your information, there are 2,247 known subspecies of For your information, there are 2,247 known subspecies of hymenopteran insects, Latin name Formicidae, and none of them are in my pants." Which cracks me up, even though I don't understand a word he's saying. "I propose a quest," he says. "We shall journey far to the east and see what lies there." By now I know what a quest is because Freak has explained the whole deal, how it started with King Arthur trying to keep all his knights busy by making them do things that proved how strong and brave and smart they were, or sometimes how totally numb, because how else can you explain dudes running around inside big clunky tin cans and praying all the time? Which I don't mention to Freak because he's very sensitive about knights and quests and secret meanings, like how a dragon isn't really just a big, slimy, fire-breathing monster. It's a symbol of nature or something. A dragon is fear of the natural world, Freak says, an archetype of the unknown. I go, what's an archetype? And Freak sighs and shakes his head and reaches into his knapsack for his dictionary. This is true. He really does keep a dictionary in his knapsack. It's his favorite book, and he pulls it out like Arnold Schwarzenegger pulling out a machine gun or something. That's the fierce look he gets with a book in his hands. Go on, he says, making me take the book. Look it up. And now I wish I hadn't said anything about this archetype dude because I hate looking up stuff in his stupid dictionary. Start with A, he says. I know that. A-R, he says. Just go along the A's until you come to A-R. Yeah, right. Easy for a genius to use the dictionary since he already knows how to spell the words. And R's never look like backwards E's to Freak, which is the way they look to me sometimes, unless I really squint and think about it. Careful, he says. You'll bite off your tongue, and then we'll have to waste the day at the emergency room getting it reattached. Microsurgery is such a bore. Didn't anyone ever tell you that? Huh? I say, but I do close my mouth so my tongue doesn't stick out. I'm still looking in the dictionary for archetype, and I'm looking for words that are underlined with red ink, because that's what Freak does the first time he looks up a word. He makes a line under it, and you'd be amazed how many are underlined. There are whole pages like that where he's looked up every single word. Finally, he spells out all the letters for me, and I find the stupid word. There's nothing about dragons here, I say, squinting hard at the stuff under the word. It just says pattern. So what is it? A sewing type of thing? Freak has this disgusted look, and he takes the dictionary and he goes, You're hopeless. Pattern is the first definition. I was referring to the second definition, which is much more interesting. A universal symbol or idea in the psyche, expressed in dreams or dream-like images. Like that helps, right? I'm getting bored with the dictionary, so I pretend to understand, and Freak finally gives up, and he shakes his head and goes, I don't know why I bother. Dinosaurs had brains the size of peanuts, and they ruled the earth for 100 million years. Chapter 9. Life is dangerous. So out we go. It's a habit by now, Freak riding up high on my shoulders and using his little feet to steer me if I forget where we're going. Not that we always know. Freak likes to make things up as he goes along. You think you're just walking down this ordinary sidewalk, and really you're crossing this dangerous bridge, the kind made of vines that hangs up high up in the air over a deep canyon. And when Freak makes it up, it seems so real, and you're afraid to look down or you'll get dizzy and fall off the sidewalk. Don't ever look down, he says. Just keep your eyes closed. And then he puts his hands over my eyes and tells me to keep walking straight. 1 foot, he says. Now the next. I'm fighting to keep my balance, and his hands are making me dizzy. 1 more step, Freak says. Steady, steady. Now, lift up your foot. There, we made it. And he takes his hands away, and I see we've crossed the street. Go east, he says when I get to the end of the block. That way, mighty steed. Yonder lies the east. I go, how do you know which way is east? And then something is glinting in my eye, and Freak is showing me this little compass. The official Cub Scout compass? That's a clever disguise so you don't know how valuable it is, he says. This is actually a rare and valuable artifact passed down for generations. Lancelot used it, so did Sir Gawain, and for a time the Black Knight kept it on a chain next to his heart. I go, so the Black Knight was a Cub Scout, huh? And Freak laughs and says, That way! We go to the east on a secret mission. We walk for miles, way beyond the pond and the playground and the school, and for a while we're going through this really ritzy neighborhood of big white houses and blue swimming pools. Freak keeps saying stuff like, That's the castle of Avarice, and Yonder lies the bloated moat. And when we go under the trees, he'll say, Proceed with caution, or All clear, depending on how the branches come down. We must be east, I say. Have we got to Yonder yet? because my stupid feet are getting sore, but Freak pats me on the head and says, "Yonder always lies over the next horizon. You could look it up if you don't believe me." Oh, I believe you. On and on, block after block, through all these neighborhoods that Freak says are really secret kingdoms. I'll bet we've gone 10 miles at least, because my legs think it's 100, and even as light as Freak is, he's starting to feel heavy. "We're almost there," he says. "Turn at the end of the block." "Where is it we're going?" "You'll see," he says, "and you will be amazed." Ahead, there's this busy intersection, cars whizzing by, and it all seems sort of familiar. "Can we stop for a Coke?" I say. "Groom gave me $1. Big deal, but we can split it." Freak goes, "Then that shall be your reward, faithful steed. Tinted sucrose and bubbles of air. Onward, onward to the fortress." It turns out that the fortress looks like part of a hospital, which it is. The regular hospital is around in front, and there's this new building added on out back. Medical research, it says over the door, and I know because I made Freak spell it out. "Does that mean they do experiments and stuff?" Freak says, "Indeed they do." "What kind of experiments?" I ask. "Can you keep a secret?" he says. "Do you swear on your honor?" "Sure, on my honor." Freak is really excited. He's shifting around on my shoulders so much I'm afraid he'll fall off. "That's not good enough," he says. "You need to swear by blood." "You mean like cut myself?" "Well, no," he says, and you can tell he's thinking about it real hard. "An actual incision is not necessary. It's the same thing if you just spit on your hand." "Huh?" "Saliva is like blood without the red," he says. "Do as I say. Spit in your hand." So I spit in my hand, just a little drop. But Freak says it doesn't matter how much. A single molecule would work because it's the principle of the thing. "Now, put your hand over your heart," he says. I put my hand over my heart. "Now, swear on your heart that the data you are about to receive will be divulged to no one." I swear. Freak bends down and he's got his hands cupped around my ear and he's whispering, "Inside the research building is a secret laboratory called the Experimental Bionics Unit. The unit's mission is to develop a new form of bionic robot for human modification." "What's that?" I say. "Shh! Speak of this to no one. But at some future time, as yet undetermined, I will enter that lab and become the first bionically improved human." "I still don't know what that means," I say. "Bionics, and please don't make me look it up in the dictionary." Bionics, and please don't make me look it up in the dictionary. "Bionics," Freak says, "that's the science of designing replacement parts for the human body." "You mean like mechanical arms and legs?" "That's ancient history," Freak says. "The bionics unit is building a whole new body, just my size." "Yeah? What'll it look like? A robot?" "A human robot," Freak says. "Also, it will look a lot like me, only enlarged and improved." "Yeah, right," I say. "Let's go home. My feet are tired." Freak tugs hard at my hair. "True," he says, with his voice getting high and excited. "I've been in there, in the special unit. I have to go every few months for tests. They've taken my measurements, analyzed my blood and metabolic rates. They've monitored my cardiac rhythms and my respiratory functions. I've already been x-rayed and CAT scanned and sonogrammed. They're fitting me for a bionic transplant. I'm going to be the first." I can tell he really means it. This isn't a pretend quest, or making houses into castles, or swimming pools into moats. This is why we came here, so Freak could show me where he's been. The place is important to him. I understand this much, even if I still don't understand about bionics or what it means to be a human robot. "Will it hurt?" I ask. "Getting your parts replaced?" Freak doesn't answer for a while. And then he says in his stern, smart voice, "Sure, it will hurt. But so what? Pain is just a state of mind. You can think your way out of anything, even pain. Pretty worried about the whole deal, and I go, but why do you want to be the first? Can't someone else be first? Isn't it dangerous? Life is dangerous, Freak says, and you can tell he's thought a lot about this. After a while, he kicks me with his little feet and says, home.